Hey guys, my name is Pablo and today I'm back with a video where I give my advice on how to get into schools like Stanford. Now I'm a Stanford grad, so my experience is mostly tailored towards Stanford, and I also applied to Stanford early admission back in 2016. And when I got in, I didn't apply to any Ivy Leagues or anything like that because I knew that I wanted to go to Stanford. So I also don't really have too much experience applying to the Ivy League or schools like MIT. But I still think that some of the advice that I'm going to give is going to be able to apply to those schools. So obviously schools like Stanford are very difficult to get in. You're looking at admissions rates of about 5%. And that just goes to show that you shouldn't really expect to get into these schools, and everybody should consider them reach schools just because of how ridiculously small of a number it is. Stanford admits around 2,000 students every year, and the truth is that there's another 2,000 students that weren't admitted but applied that could make just as good of a class as the 2,000 that did get in. And this can be exemplified pretty much by looking at Harvard or Princeton. They have their own classes that are very well-rounded and are very accomplished as well. So even if you don't get in, you shouldn't feel bad about it. It doesn't mean that you're not accomplished. It doesn't mean that you're not smart. It doesn't mean that you weren't worthy or anything like that. Even though these schools are very hard to get into, there are still some things that you can do to put forth your best application. Now, this is only my experience and from the information that I got from talking to my friends at Stanford, so take everything I say with a grain of salt, but I hope that this can be helpful to some people. The truth is, or the bottom line when it comes to Stanford admissions, is that they're trying to create the most well-rounded class that they can. And the only way that they can do that is if they look at people that come from different backgrounds. And so they have to tailor their admissions and be more holistic and not just look at grades, not just look at SAT scores, so that way everybody can have some sort of a chance to get in. While schools want to see very hard coursework and want to see people taking all the AP classes that they can because it can show that they can do well in college, the truth is that people that go to schools like Exeter are going to have access to way more resources, way more AP classes that they can take, as opposed to a student that lives like in East LA where their schools might not even offer any sort of honors classes. So because of this, the way that Stanford admissions looks at your application is very heavily dependent on the high school that you go to and the area that you're from. So because of this, the absolute best advice that you can get on how to get into Stanford is not going to come from me. It's going to come from someone in your school, someone in your area who got into Stanford or a similar school like that, and can tell you what they did in their community to get into Stanford. So while I can give you general advice like do good on the SAT, do good in your tests, take time on your essays, what really is going to help you is talking to someone who got in before you. In my experience, I had a friend that got in the year before me, and I really didn't know anything about what it took to get into a school like Stanford, but just kind of seeing the example that he put forth, seeing that he was very much involved in school in different areas and kind of very just involved in the community is what really helped me put forth my best application. So obviously not that many people are admitted to these elite schools, so it might be difficult to find someone in your area that got into Stanford that is willing to help you. So my best advice in those cases is that you should try to talk to teachers at your school who might be able to put you into contact with previous students who got into some schools that you want to look into. Or in the absolute worst case, you could even check out LinkedIn and literally just make an account and just look up Stanford and whatever area you're from. And on LinkedIn, you'll find a bunch of people that went to Stanford that are from that area. And basically, once you come into contact with a previous admit, you should just ask them, like, what did you do when you were in high school? How did you study for the SAT? How did you get involved in the community? What did you do after class? What are some things that I can do to get myself more involved? How did you write your essays? How did you approach them? What I did to get into Stanford as someone who went to a high school with a population that was 90% Hispanic is going to be much different than people from a lot of different areas in the United States, or even especially someone that's an international student. So you should just be on the lookout for that. And that's really my main piece of advice. Just focus on finding someone that was in a similar position as you and ask for their advice. They're going to be able to tell you a lot, especially if they just barely went through the application process a year or two ago. Everything's going to be fresh in their minds. They're going to have their essays and they can send those to you. You can kind of see, you can talk to them about their writing process and everything. And in general, I feel like people are very willing to help. At the end of the day, all it takes is just sending one message to this person. Even if they don't reply, or worst case, they just say no, and you'll be completely fine. You'll be in the same position as you were the day before. So just send out that text and see if you can get any sort of help. Now, that's the main piece of advice that I wanted to give. But some other advice that I want to give is that Yes, your grades and your SAT are important, but they definitely are far from everything. You should take some time, take like 2 or 3 months to study on the SAT, take practice exams, and review stuff that trips you up, and just try to get the best score that you can. But you shouldn't take either of the tests more than twice. An increase in your SAT score of 20 to 30 points isn't going to get you in. And I know that it can be kind of like interesting or appealing to try to see what other people's stats were, going on YouTube and watching all these how I got into Stanford videos and people just listing their GPAs and their SATs and having all these numbers thrown at you. But at the end of the day, that's not going to help you get into Stanford. You can just look up what the median Stanford GPA and the median Stanford SAT score is, and that's literally all the information you really need as some sort of target. And even if you don't meet those targets, you can still apply and put forth a good application and still have a chance at getting in. It's good to get an idea, but you gotta make sure that you don't spend too much time doing anything like that. And even with SAT, don't spend like a month just trying to get a 20 to 30 point increase like I mentioned. You really need to spend some time going outside, getting involved, trying to find activities that you find interesting, taking on leadership positions, starting a club at your high school, trying to find things that you're passionate about. I know everybody always says that you need to find something that you're passionate about, but you don't have to be passionate about the things that you do in high school. You're a kid, you don't really know what you're gonna do like even 4 years from now. So just worry about doing things for the sake of being involved. Do things because it's fun to be around other people. I guess this advice is a little bit weird given the pandemic, and obviously we can't be around people specifically, but just find ways that you can be involved, and not because you're passionate about community service, although that could be amazing and that could be true, but just because you're passionate about having friends and having a good time and leading people as a group and accomplishing a goal like going to Quiz Bowl and winning like a championship. And even if you don't win, like at least you got to have some fun with some friends and you can have stories that you can write about. If you want an example of this, I have a video where I talk about my essays that got me into Stanford. And while I didn't talk about anything particularly crazy in my life, I really just talked about what I spent my time doing outside of school. But I put forth those stories in an interesting way, and really made sure to show the admissions officers that I was introspective, not just that I was in 50 clubs at once and had like the best scores ever. I really try to show that I was a human, that I took time to look deep inside myself and ask myself, like, where am I going? What are my interests? Where do I feel like I belong in this community? Why do I want to help this community that I'm part of? And in general, just try to figure out like who you are and try to put that forth to the admissions officers. It really sounds cliche, but Stanford is really trying to get to know who you are as a person through your application. And it can be hard to really put forth who you are as a person if all you really spend your time doing is studying for 6 AP classes and studying for the SAT. You need to be involved in your school somehow. And when I say that, I don't mean that you need to start a nonprofit that raises $50,000 for some sort of charity, or you need to be like a national Olympiad in science or anything like that, or start your own computer science class in high school. All I'm saying is that you just need to be involved in like your local like sports tennis team and talk about how you rallied people together and competed, and just anything that your school offers, anything that you want to do. Talk about your work experience as a cashier, talk about anything really, talk about your relationship with your parents, talk about any hardships that you might have gone through life. And in general, everyone says this and when writing your essays, but don't just like tell people about it. You really should paint a picture, show them the story that it is. Stanford is a very difficult school to get into. I've said it a million times. And you really shouldn't set your expectations too high because it can really go either way. You should still be ambitious, still put forth the best application that you can. Get as much help as you can from your peers, from your teachers, from other people that have gone into Stanford, and just be confident. And when you send the application in, applaud yourself because those applications are very long and it's a lot of work. And just the fact that you were able to complete your high school career with the hopes of getting into Stanford is really something to be proud of. And if you're in a position where you can apply to Stanford, chances are you're still going to end up going to a great school. But yeah, that's all the advice that I have to give. I really appreciate you listening. I know that there's tons of videos on YouTube on this topic, And I'm sure that people have very great advice, but in the end, just look around your community, look at people that have gotten in from your school, and really ask them, and just have fun with the whole process. And if you got anything out of this video, I really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed, and even if you commented, so I can get to know some of you guys. And yeah, stick around if you want any more videos like this. Thank you.